So the other day I posted on BlueSky that I did not know why we called them antiderivatives in Calculus 1, but in all of other types of math, we call them integrals. And so I learned, let me read you my notes, and this is from the University of Texas Mathematics Department, that antiderivatives are simply the inverse function of an integrand or a derivative. Integrand and derivatives are generally the same thing, if not always, because when you integrate, the first thing you would do is find an antiderivative. So that means that the function already attached to the the integral is a derivative. Whereas integrals are a representation of the sum of area under a curve. So the antiderivative is simply the inverse function of a derivative, where the integral is the calculated or calculable area under a curve. What is the difference between being a language coach, a language tutor, a language teacher, a polyglot, and a linguist? So this is actually right up my alley, my field of study, and my content area. So to answer these questions, a language coach helps emphasize successful language learning strategies. That is not to say that the language coach is teaching you a language or supporting your language learning in a specific language, but rather language coaches like myself help to guide you in ways to implement ease into your language learning journey. Generally, we would speak, probably, like, if we both were English speakers, we would be speaking English, not your target language. A language tutor, however, would assist with supporting the learning and knowledge regarding theory, application, structure, grammar, phonemes, and sounds, and all of those different kind of things. That would be what a language tutor does, and that would often be done in the target language. So if you and I were both, if I was a language tutor, which I am not, you would come to me and we would probably discuss the grammar of your Spanish homework. A language teacher is someone who went to school in order to be able to teach a language. The language grammar, theories, culture often is included in that. But yeah, I think we all know what a teacher is. A language teacher is a teacher who teaches languages. And often language teachers teach just one language. A polyglot. A polyglot is, polyglot is not an English word, it is a borrowed word. It literally translates to multi-tongue or multi-tongued. And it is the word that most people use to describe someone who speaks multiple languages. Where a linguist is often someone who studies a language. In fact, linguistic anthropology is one of the 5 major fields of anthropology. So linguistic anthropologists often call themselves linguistic anthropologists, whereas someone who studied just linguistics would call themselves a linguist. I know that Steve Kaufman here on YouTube, who does the link and stuff like that, he goes by a linguist. His book was The Linguist. And of course, I'm not going to take somebody's identity away from them just because of a definition. If that's what he wants to call himself, that's what he wants to call himself. He's a master at languages. Let him be a master. And lastly, I was asked, why are Spanish and Russian so similar? This was actually something that happened at work. We had a conversation because I and a few other coworkers speak Spanish. We don't really have a whole lot of Spanish-speaking students right now, but we do have a lot of Russian speakers on our team and in our community and as students. And I've noticed that a lot of Russian and Spanish is very similar. So I wanted to know why. And first and foremost, I think the idea of cultural diffusion is ignored, and so I think it would be good to always assume cultural diffusion occurred between the languages, and that's true. They're on the same landmass. Both are European languages. They often will use the same loan words from other languages, or in their origins, a lot of words have the same common vocabulary. That is often due to a common ancestry, and I believe, I didn't write it down, but I believe both Spanish and Russian are Indo-European languages, so they are related in the same family. They do have a genetic ancestry. Yes, languages have genealogies, and they both have a huge influence from Greek. So also, I think this is more of like a by chance kind of thing. Spanish and Russian have similar grammar and language structures. They're both flexible. You could put, in Spanish, you could put the subject at the end, the middle, or the beginning of a sentence. You may not even need to put the subject's name, just depending on the conjugation. Very similar way that Russian works.